The number one reason why people are afraid of going into EVs, full EVs, not hybrids, is because of range anxiety. Ask anyone out there, price is first, obviously, but range anxiety is second. They don't at this point believe that the range is sufficient for their needs. Now, they may be wrong on that, some of them won't be, but that's one of the beliefs. There's a new generation of EVs coming out in China, and they're just starting now in America, which is designed to overcome that one totally. I'm Dave, welcome to Dave Takes It On. And we're going to have a look at a totally novel approach to range anxiety. So, what is range anxiety? Well, very simply, you have a set size of battery and your car has a set efficiency. You can change that efficiency with your driving style, but only by a small amount. So if you have a particular battery size and that gives you 200 miles range, there's not very much you can do to avoid having to stop and charge if you're on a 300-mile journey. It really is that simple. And the problem is not so much recharging it, because there are, in the UK anyhow, plenty of chargers out there, particularly on the main routes, the motorways, and there are a lot of hubs building up. So it's not as big a problem out there as people are led to believe by the mass hysteria media. But they still don't like it, and they also still think it's going to take an hour to recharge your battery, and that's an hour added on to your journey time, which they don't really want. So the first answer they came up with was a hybrid. And this was, in my opinion, this was a total non-starter, although it has actually caught on, and I'll tell you why. What a hybrid is it's a car with a petrol engine. It also has a small battery. These are typically around about 10 kilowatt hours. They're really not very big at all. I know some are bigger, they're typically not. And that battery is designed to assist with your economy. Now, you cannot charge this battery by plugging it in anywhere. There is only one way of charging it, and that is through regenerative braking. When you put your foot on the brake pedal, the motor turns into a generator, an alternator effectively. And the more you put your foot on the brake, the more power it will take out of your movement. So your car is moving, that's turning the motors now, and that is producing electricity. And you can't get anything for nothing, so the electricity you've produced comes out of the energy that was previously in movement, in motion. So that's really simple. So in principle, a hybrid electric vehicle is really simple. It has a battery, has a motor, has a petrol engine as well. And when you're driving on the petrol engine. You're always driving on the petrol engine. There is no alternative. However, when you apply the brakes, instead of having friction pads pressing against a disc, which turns the motion into heat, what happens with a hybrid is the motors turn into generators and they produce electricity from the energy of the movement. So it's a really simple principle. So in theory, it's energy for nothing. You were braking anyhow. You were going to use that energy, but in the form of heat, which would be wasted, just blown away. And now what you're doing, you're turning that into electricity and you're turning that into a useful propulsion for your car. The way you get that battery power back into motion is just with a very sophisticated gearbox, which has the electric motor coming in one way, it has the petrol engine coming in the other, and the electric motor will take up some of the load that the petrol engine would have taken. So it's really simple. You're driving along on the petrol engine, you're approaching some traffic lights, you brake, and some of the energy in your motion is turned into electricity. When you accelerate, that electricity, it's automatic, you don't control it, is turned back into power through the motor, and your petrol engine now has to do less work to set you off from the traffic lights. Really simple. The problem with that is it's a very complicated and quite an expensive system. and all it's ever doing is taking a little bit of the load off the petrol engine. It's making a little bit more efficient. Now they claim all sorts of advantages and figures. In actual fact, it's really not very much, but they are more efficient, and therefore if they're more efficient, they will use less petrol, and if they use less petrol, they will produce less pollution, less carbon dioxide, less carbon monoxide, less toxic gases, carcinogenic gases. So they are to be applauded. However, it's not the end, because in the bonnet you still have a petrol engine. It's as simple as that. So the next generation, they simply moved on to plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEV. And these operate really quite differently, although the mechanics is quite the same. It's the computer programming and the operation that is very different, and the charging. So you start off with a standard car, petrol, diesel. Diesel seems to be going out of fashion, so they're mostly petrol. So you have a petrol engine under the bonnet normally. You also have a battery, only the battery now is quite a bit bigger. These are 15, 20, 25, maybe 30 kilowatt hour batteries. So they're getting to be a little bit of a sensible size. And these are connected in pretty much the same way, with one major difference. And that is, if there is enough power in the battery, the car can actually drive purely on the battery and not need the petrol engine at all. So this is a big advantage. So you've got a bigger battery now. You can actually drive this as an EV over shorter distances. And we're talking 10, 20 miles, something in that region. I know some go a lot further, others go less, but typically 10 or 20 miles. So here's how it works. First of all, the petrol engine is available for you, as is your battery. So assuming you're starting off with a full battery and a full petrol tank, then when you start the car, it will operate on the battery. You have a full battery. So the control system, the computer, will decide, let's use the battery. And you can drive a reasonable distance purely on battery. It has limitations, has a distance limitation. It still can't go huge distances, but it also has a speed restriction. Generally speaking, around about 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, however much you've got in the battery, your petrol engine will fire up and will now start assisting. And now it becomes more like a hybrid, where the petrol engine is being assisted by the electric. The electric battery and the motor, they're not really man enough to power the car totally on electricity. But the big problem is that you have a very much bigger battery, and the amount of electricity that you can generate from regenerative braking is not that much at all. It's certainly not enough to totally charge your battery all the time. If you can imagine, for example, you're on a motorway and you've got a 6-hour journey ahead of you. You start off with a set size of battery, and while you're driving, particularly on a motorway, assuming it's no traffic, you're not going to be using the brakes at all. So you'll be getting zero regenerative braking. Now, some of them have other methods. They can use some of the power to switch into the motors, turn the motors into generators and recharge the battery. But that's just cutting the efficiency of the petrol engine. It's not really a win-win. It's a win-lose. Battery gains, the petrol engine loses. It will burn more petrol. So what these are ideal for is people who do short commutes. If your commute is, let's say, 20 miles, and your car is capable of doing over 20 miles on its full battery, and assuming you're in stop-start commuter traffic and you never get above 30 or 40 miles an hour, then in theory you can actually use your PHEV, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, as a full electric vehicle. You might never actually use the petrol engine. However, it's there, and so consequently, if you do decide to go on a 6-hour motorway journey, it will just take over. Your battery will fairly quickly lose most of its power. It will be used, it will operate like a hybrid to make the petrol engine more efficient, but it can't replace it. So over a short period of time on the motorway, your battery will just go down. Never goes down to zero. The control system won't allow that. There's always something in it to protect it. But effectively, you're driving on the petrol engine. So this, to many people in their mind, is an absolutely ideal vehicle for them. They can commute locally or as an EV, no pollution at all, and they can go as far as they want, just back on the petrol. The only snag is there's a very much bigger battery, and like we said, on the motorway, it will go down, and you cannot recover that on most journeys. Can on some, on most you can't. So these are designed specifically, as the title suggests, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. They are designed for you to plug in when you get home or to your destination and top the battery up very much quicker than you could from regenerative braking or a tiny little bit from excess energy from the motors. And this really is the bugbear of the PHEV. A lot of people don't understand how they actually work. And they think that you've got a battery under there, you've got electric motor, you've got a petrol engine, and therefore you can just drive, the petrol engine will charge the battery, etc., etc. They don't fully understand how these work. Some people do, an awful lot don't. The other thing is, an awful lot of people who buy plug-in hybrid electric vehicles do so because they can't charge at home. If they can't charge at home, they write off having an EV, can't charge at home, can't have an EV, and obviously they can't charge their plug-in hybrid at home. And for the vast majority of them, they drive their PHEV as a pure petrol engine. When they get home, the battery's almost flat. They can't charge it. The battery can't charge on its own. So next morning when you go to work, there's virtually nothing in the battery. If there is anything, it disappears on the way to work. Mostly when you get to work, your battery's flat. And when you drive home, your battery's flat. And when you get home, the battery's flat. When you wake up in the morning, the battery's flat. So unless you plug them in, as the name suggests, then these just drive as pure petrol cars. So someone has spent extra money, they got a load of extra equipment on board, and it's not actually being used. And this was one of the problems, and this is why an awful lot of plug-in hybrids are now starting to see the sales dropping, is people are understanding that if you jump in your plug-in hybrid electric vehicle every day, and every day the engine runs, you've got to be asking, why have I got a plug-in hybrid? Why should I plug it in? The second thing they say is, well, if I have to go to a public charger to plug it in, that costs a fortune, as you non-EV drivers keep telling us, and it actually can do. So why would I go out and pay to have my battery topped up at a public charger and then pay for the petrol, and it's going to drive mainly on petrol anyhow? So there was a bit of a conundrum. What's happening at the moment is there's a new, in effect, hybrid coming out, and it's very, very different. In China, they realise this. China's a very big country. They do longer distances. Certainly the UK. I mean, what is it? 700-800 miles from Land's End to John O'Groats. It's no distance at all. You're getting towards some of the cars. Some of the EVs now are going to be able to do it with just one stop. And if you can drive from Land's End to John O'Groats without stopping once for a pee or a lunch or a snooze, then great. Good luck to you. I certainly can't. But in China and America, they need something different. I suspect also Australia, where you sometimes have massive distances between cities or areas. So what's coming up in China now, and this is really interesting, is they're now starting to install petrol engines, but purely as generators. That's it. They are not connected to the gearbox or to the wheels. They are pure EVs to drive. You will always drive on 100% electric, always. As a 100% electric vehicle, it will have regenerative braking. So when you accelerate, it will use power. When you brake, it will put it back into the battery. But you're still stuck with that limit of 100, 200, 300 miles or whatever the range happens to be. And this is where the petrol generator now comes in, because it's not connected to anything other than a generator, and that generator is connected to your battery. So If you picture the scene now, you're going on a 6-hour motorway journey. What will happen very simply is you will set off on your battery. It's all you can. The battery connected to your motors, and your motors connected to the wheels. Nothing else is. So you will set off as an EV. And you will drive for 100, 200, 300 miles, whatever your range is. And assuming at this point you're not going to stop and recharge the battery. But in this case, when your battery starts running down, and it will never let it go down to zero, by the way, probably maybe 10%, I don't know the exact figure, but when your battery gets down to a preset level, the petrol engine, now tucked away in the boot, will fire up, and it will turn a generator, not your wheels. That generator will produce electricity, and that electricity will be fed into the battery, and your batteries are feeding electricity into your motor, and your motor is what's driving your wheels. So with one of these new extended range EVs, what you're getting is you will always, always, always drive on electricity. That's it. You can't drive on anything else. But if you are going further distance than your range will allow, your petrol generator will fire up on the journey automatically, and it will start keeping the battery at a preset level. It cannot provide power for the wheels ever. All it does is it keeps your battery going, and the faster you go, the faster the generator goes to put the power back in. And likewise now, when you come to a stop, assuming you've done 3, 4, 5 hours driving and you desperately need a stop, you need a lunch, etc., you now have a choice. If you've got the time, let's say you're going to have a nice leisurely lunch, what you should do is plug into a public charger and top up your battery, and then go to the petrol station and top up your petrol. So the beauty of these is that probably 95% of the time, everybody will run on as an EV on electricity, and because almost 70% of all people in the UK, can't talk for other countries, but the UK can charge at home and do charge at home, it means that you will only ever use that petrol generator for your longer journeys. You also might not choose to use it because it could work out that if you have, for example, a Tesla with really cheap charging prices down in the 30p range, that could work out cheaper than running up your petrol generator to recharge the battery with the cost of the petrol. But you now have a choice. If you come back every night and you can charge at home, you plug it in, you might never use that petrol generator apart from long journeys. But if ever your battery's flat, you've forgotten to charge it or anything, that's fine. Just set off. The petrol generator will keep your battery charged enough for you to reach your destination. And when you get there, you can choose. But it gives a choice. And it means that unlike a hybrid electric vehicle or a petrol hybrid, this will never run on petrol. It will always, always default to the electricity, to the battery, to your motors. It will drive as an EV. And if you can charge at home, you may never actually use the petrol generator. These are on the way. They're in China already. It's the next big boom. It's better than a plug-in hybrid or a hybrid vehicle. And for the people who doubt whether the range is enough on a pure EV, this just gives them that reassurance that they can go much further. And it's an awful lot cheaper as well. The workmanship that goes into having this gearbox in a hybrid car or a petrol hybrid car to get them working together, the two power sources coming, it's a nightmare. It's a mess. And it's also very expensive. It's also probably quite troublesome. If anything's going to go wrong, it's going to be in there. This one's just a generator with a it's like you could go down B&Q and buy yourself a little petrol generator. It's just one of those. These are superbly small, efficient, reliable. They'll just chug away in the background, but if you're not needing them, they just sit there quietly in the background. So for an awful lot of people, these make sense. Not for your daily commuters. They will find this. Watch out for these. These are on the way. They're not yet available in the UK. There's plenty available in China. Ford is talking about releasing them in America, again with the longer distances. And this could actually be really, really, really useful for EV drivers who tow caravans. Caravans, yeah. you have your range halved when you tow a caravan. But if you've got a petrol generator in the back chugging away, just topping up your battery, you can now go much further. So it now comes down to a lifestyle. If you want to stop more often to break up your journey, to see the sights and the scenery, and you want to charge on the way, great, go for it. But if you don't and you're in a hurry to get to your destination, just make sure your petrol tank is full for the generator and just set off. You'll get there. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. I'm Dave. If you have enjoyed this, please click the like button. If you would like to see more, then please subscribe. That will allow us to notify you every time we launch a video. And for anyone who wants to support the channel in a financial way, have a look at our Patreon page. There's lots of goodies available for people who support the channel financially. So a big shout out to all our existing Patreon members for supporting us. I'm Dave.